What's going on? Welcome to Unlocking Your Inner Strength. In these episodes, I share with you insights and inspirations that have come to me on my path in life, and hopefully they can be a welcome hand of guidance as you move along your journey. I teach because I'm passionate about my message. I teach because it helps me to learn more deeply. Thanks for sharing a few minutes of your time with me for this week's episode, and without further ado, here is this week's show. What's up, everybody? It's Kyle with episode 255 of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. And today, I'm going to go over the benefits of fasting. I've done this before. It's in the book, but I realized that not everybody sees everything. And this was a question that came up a few times after last week's episode, the one that I did last Thursday. Before I get to that, if you're interested, you got to hurry up. We're doing the fat shredder at Newell Strength starts next Monday. We still have spots available. Just message us or private message me, and we'll get you into it. Next thing is the Panda number 7 challenge starts May 3rd. Taking 12 people, so keep that in mind. Updated information. You get me coaching you for 45 days. Results guaranteed. A lot of mind map in there too. All right. So let's hop into this. It's a common thing when people begin fasting, at least initially, to think about what they're taking away from themselves. Right? Oh, I can't eat 3 meals a day, or if you're depending on what version you're doing, I'm no longer going to have my lunch that I look forward to every day. And these are things we address in the Panda Challenge, but rather than focusing on things that you're taking away from yourself, let's talk about the things you're giving yourself, which are the benefits. I'll admit that most people come into fasting for weight loss as the initial thing. When I first began with it, it was to help achieve a certain level of body fat for the last time I competed in 2014 with bodybuilding. But then you realize that the weight loss or the body fat loss is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to it. So I'll go through this list. This list is not in any particular order. I'll kind of riff on each thing, and then you let me know if you have questions. So the first two, arguably the most important, and you can't really separate these, is reduced inflammation and increased insulin sensitivity. They go hand in hand, okay? You're not really going to find inflammation in the body in somebody that's very insulin sensitive, unless there's like an acute injury or something like that. If you are insulin resistant, which most people are, and I'll explain this in a second, you're going to have inflammation. Insulin resistance and inflammation are the two root causes of every disease. Those two things. If you can eliminate them, you're going to dramatically improve your health. So reduced inflammation, increased insulin sensitivity. So when you become insulin resistant, right, that's something we're trying to heal with the Panda type of fasting that I teach, and that's in the book. When you're insulin resistant, your body is overproducing insulin because your body has become resistant to the effects of insulin. So it's got to produce more and more and more until it can't produce enough to clear the blood glucose and lower blood sugar back down to normal. So what do most doctors do? They prescribe you injectable insulin, which just makes the problem worse. Right? You're trying to short circuit it, but now it's that increase in insulin that you're injecting is just going to jam this sugar that's toxic, that's floating around the bloodstream to places where it can't fit, like your toes, your eyeballs, your extremities. That's why a lot of these people, type 2 diabetics, wind up going blind or having to get their digits cut off because that sugar that causes the inflammation and toxicity causes very real problems. So injecting insulin, not a good idea. And that's not addressing the problem. So we want to reduce inflammation and increase insulin sensitivity. When we do this, you're going to optimize your hormones. Things like growth hormone, testosterone by way of luteinizing hormone, um, mild levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But those are the main benefit. Reduce inflammation, you dramatically increase your health and well-being. Let's talk about weight loss. It is by far the simplest thing you can do to lose weight. People talk about these North American diets like keto and all these crazy things. You can only eat a certain food group, or you got to stay away from a certain food group, and things that are very complex and don't take into account any of the brain science as far as how a habit is actually formed. Because remember, if you can't form a habit around it, why are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense, because you're going to revert back to the norm right after. So you're going to have weight loss, right? And it's compounded. What I mean by this, the longer you do this type of fasting, the more your body will change. So I'm going on the black version of Panda now 2 straight years. And I can tell you that it just keeps changing the body. Feedback I get when I do measurements, which I don't do that often, but when people, visually see me or whatever, and I can tell you my performance continues to improve. When you do a diet, right? A diet, as most people know it, has a defined starting point and ending point, and then as soon as you stop it, you revert back to the norm, or you're usually worse off. So the weight loss, right? And that's because of how insulin is being controlled over long periods of time. Insulin is a storage hormone. When insulin is elevated, right, it's an anabolic hormone. It signals the body, mainly fat cells, to store. So forget about fat loss or permanent weight loss when you're doing a typical North American diet. So weight loss is a big thing. Now with this, I will tell you, there's been studies that show when you start doing these longer fasts, right, not a 16-hour fast, that, to be honest with you, that's not really going to do anything for you. It's better than eating multiple times a day, though. That's how I kind of explain that one. Metabolism can increase with fasting, where if you're cutting calories, and food is your main fuel source, metabolism is going to lower. So fasting, when you start getting into these 1 meal a day, 48-hour fast, metabolism can actually go up by 5 to 14%. Not that that's a huge deal, but we don't want it slowing down, right? We don't want to bring it to a crawl like we do when we're cutting 1,000 calories out of our diet. And now metabolism has to lower to match what you're putting in, because that's your main fuel source. When we're fasting, your main fuel source, by and large, is your body fat. No, you do not need to be in a ketogenic state to achieve this. That's another thing people very much confuse. Okay. Hunger is also going to go down when we're talking about weight loss. Whereas if you're cutting calories, playing the North American diet game, hunger is going to continue to go up over time. There's a hormone called ghrelin, leptin, but there's another one, not quite as important as far as what I talk about. But hunger will continue to go down over time with longer form fasting. Typical North American diet, hunger is going to go up, and that is the downfall pretty much of every diet out there. If you can't withstand the hunger, you can't stick with it long term. I don't care how much willpower you have. I would consider myself somebody that's got a lot of willpower and a lot of determination. And when I would compete with bodybuilding, before I learned this, even I would have periods where I would break within the contest prep. So I'm not saying outside of that, but within the contest prep, when I knew that it was not something that was in the plan, because the hunger would just get so extreme at sometimes. Now you're going to have more energy. So this is a big one. These mild levels of cortisol and adrenaline, these are stress hormones, but they're also alertness hormones. They're very good for you when they're at mild levels and they're under control. That's where the boost from metabolism is going to come from, that and the mitochondria really becoming more efficient. But more energy, that is a huge one. Energy is your number one asset as a human being, right? If 2 things I look for in the eating program, it should give you more energy. That's your number one biofeedback thing. And it should give you what I call the edge. It should have you playing at your A game. Knowing that it's a little bit tough, a little bit challenging, but it's something that kind of sets you apart, right? And my mentality with everything in life is, if you look at what the masses are doing, do the opposite, and you're probably going to be right. So more energy. Right, and that is a huge thing. You're not going to have the midday slump. You're not going to have a crash and all that stuff. When we just went on, thanks, Michael. It's good to know that you're feeling that too. When we just went on vacation, one thing I do when I go on vacation a couple times a year. I go back to a 16-8 fast. Um, so with the 16-8 fast, right, and that's just what most people talk about when they're talking about fasting. I like to have my lunch, right, with the kids. So I treat myself. I do peanut butter and jelly. It reminds me of when I was a kid. But I can tell you my energy is not nearly as good when I'm on vacation, right, when I'm having that lunch. And I snap right back to it, right back to the black version today. But that's something else. Now, brain function is another benefit that we get from longer form fasting. With brain function, growth hormone is going to be elevated. That's going to have a positive impact on the brain. You have something called B, D, and F. Okay, it's a growth factor for the brain. It's like fertilizer for your neurons in your brain and the synapses. It used to be thought that you can only increase BDNF through exercise, which is one of the main reasons I always say exercise is really just for your brain. It's not for weight loss. People misuse exercise. It drives other habits, but to use it solely as a weight loss tool is useless. It doesn't work. That's a different topic. But brain function is going to improve. So the alertness hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, are going to be nice and elevated. So your brain function and ability to learn and stay focused should greatly improve. Most people's fears when they start fasting that they're going to have brain fog and they're going to get hangry and whatnot. When you first start this type of fasting, you do have food withdrawal symptoms. Food is a drug. I always say that, right? When you break off of it the way you're used to it, you're going to have some withdrawal symptoms. You might get a little headache for a couple days. You might have fogginess for a couple days. It's going to go away. Believe me. When you get to the other side of that rainbow, you're going to be happy. You're going to be like, man, this is fantastic the way I feel. Okay. Improved digestion. So I always say, like using men as an example, right, with the ripped dads. A real simple way I can ask somebody to kind of get a real good snapshot of their health without having them have to do blood work is, okay, so this is for men. Is your digestion on point? Meaning, are we not getting a lot of bloating? No bloating, I should say. So gas should be pretty low, gas production. Are you having regular, smooth bowel movements? Usually at the same time every day. It might not be perfect every day, but at the same time roughly. And can you get an erection? If your digestion's on point like that and you can get an erection, you're pretty healthy as a man. I can tell you that with full confidence. But anyhow, improved digestion. So when I first started with fasting, just the 16-8 in 2014, at the time, one of the things, I was tracking everything because I was getting ready for 2 bodybuilding shows, but I would take hydrochloric acid in between the meals to help with digestion. Hydrochloric acid is your main digestive enzyme that gets depleted with stress. So, as a side note, too, and there's research, plenty of research out there that backs what I'm about to tell you now, and I've learned this years ago, and so I've been teaching it for years. When you have indigestion or acid reflux, it is not too much acid, it's too little acid in 99% of the cases. They put you on a PPI, they're going to reduce the acid even further, it's going to create further complications. That is a road you do not want to go down. But back to the point at hand. So the hydrochloric acid you would take in the middle of a meal, and if you felt like a burning, it means you didn't need it, right? It's an acid, but you would know, okay, I'm sufficient, I don't need it. So this is something I learned from the late, great Charles Poliquin. And you could cut down over time. Well, within a couple of weeks of just doing a 16-8, I realized, man, I'm taking it, I'm getting that burning, I don't need it anymore, right? So really quickly it improved that. And I always had good digestion, but no more need for hydrochloric acid. Okay, so improved digestion. This is one of the most under-talked about things with this type of fasting. That's one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, is you have more time. You don't have to stop and eat all the time, right? Momentum's a powerful thing in your day-to-day functioning. Think about a train or a rocket ship. The hardest part is getting going, right? That's where you expend the most energy. Now, if you have to stop and start multiple times throughout the day because you're following a typical North American diet and you're snacking and you're eating your main meals, you have to stop and start. That's very hard for your brain metabolically to continue to start like that. Like when I teach people how to work, right, and about time mastery when you're working, it's short breaks built in, but you're not stopping to eat and digest. So think about this. To digest, you need to be in your parasympathetic nervous system. To focus and have this output type of that we're looking for in work usually, you're going to be sympathetic a lot of the times, right? Meaning fight, flight, or freeze. when we are digesting, majority of the blood in the body wants to go to the stomach. Okay. So where I'm going with that anyhow is if you don't have time to sit down, let's say you're not doing the panda version of fasting, but if you don't have time to sit down and eat the meal, skip the meal because you're going to be in the wrong part of your nervous system to digest the meal. But more time. Time is the most valuable thing you have. It's the one thing you cannot get more of, right? So you're going to open up pockets of time. Even if you just started skipping lunch, think about that. That's 5 hours for the week typically that you get back. What are you going to do with that? Right now, let's say you used to eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You start skipping breakfast and lunch. Well, during the work week, that's another 10 hours you get back. It's amazing, right? It's an amazing thing. You also find you're going to spend a lot less money on food. Autophagy. So this is the last one, and I'm just going to talk about one more thing after this. Autophagy is when your body goes through, and in the absence of calories for an extended period of time, will start eating up damaged parts of cells, recycling them, or getting rid of them. This does not happen in the presence of calories. You need to start crossing that 20-hour, 24-hour period, though, to really consistently to get this effect. But that's another great benefit of fasting. And lastly, it's simple, right? Complexity is the enemy of execution. And this is the simplest thing you're ever going to do. Right, this is the simplest thing you're ever gonna do, and that's right, YT. If you, I see people still in my cringe when let's say I'm on the road and I'm driving. I see somebody jammed, they're eating a breakfast sandwich, drinking a shake, and all this. I'm like, why? What is the point of that? It makes no sense. Or a lot of people will eat while they're working. That's number one rule, right? If we're not talking about even fasting, if you don't have time to sit down and enjoy the meal, skip the meal. Which is another reason I'd recommend if you're doing like a one meal a day, that dinner is typically your meal. I know there's better points if we look at the rhythm of the body to eat, usually around midday. But for most people, as far as adherence and being able to eat in a relaxed state, it's going to be more towards dinner. But it's simple, right? When we're looking at habit formation, we need simplicity. If it's complex, it's not going to be a habit. Forget about it. Anything that you're really great at in your life might be complex now to the outside observer, but it started by stacking simple things on top of each other. I can guarantee you that. All right. So that's what I got for you guys today. I'll put in the comments section maybe where you can get our free fasting manual. Don't forget the Fat Shredder begins next Monday. So if you want a spot in that, we still have spots. You can just message me and we'll get you in there, or just go to newellstrength.com. And the Panda number 7 begins May 3rd. I'm taking 12 people into that. You could be in tip-top shape by mid-June. And we do a lot of mindset stuff in there as well, mind map stuff in there. Thanks for the support. Hit the like button, hit the share button. You all have a good day. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. Appreciate your support as always. Thanks, guys.
You wrote for today's episode. I appreciate you and your time truly. I'm humbled and honored if you made it to the end of this episode. Don't forget, you can go to kylenewell.com for your free ebook written by yours truly on getting started with fasting, infused with 5 mind map principles never before seen. This is something I have not given out to anybody else that'll help you see the light when it comes to your fasting journey and creating better health, both physically and internally. Remember, it's all about the mind, body, and spirit. Until next week, peace.